Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Card Talk, a podcast where we spend a little bit of time talking about cards from Lord of the Rings, the card game. I'm your host, Dave Walsh.
And I'm Grant Thompson, just along for the ride.
So, Grant, what card are we going to talk about today?
We are going to be talking about the Naith Guide from the Dunlin Trap. It's a cost of 2, has 1 willpower, 1 attack, 0 defense, 1 hit point, and from the leadership sphere. That is an ally which has the Scout trait and the Silvan trait. With the response after Naith Guide enters play, choose a hero. That hero does not exhaust to commit to the quest this round.
And the reason I guess we picked this card is because certain cards make sense to talk about in certain deck styles. So this is part of a series that we're doing about like Silvan, bouncy Silvans coming in and out of play. And so what deck that has this Silvan bouncy trait would not be complete if it didn't have the Naith Guide in it, right? So what is your initial thoughts of the Naith Guide? You don't play Silvans as much as I do, so it's always good to get your thoughts about this guy before mine.
Yeah, that's right. I don't play Silvans. Well, I don't play bouncy Silvans as much.
Right.
I prefer the more manipulation Silvans, like manipulating the encounter deck, victory display, that sort of Silvan type.
Like the Rossiel sort of thing, right?
That's it. But I have been messing around with a few bouncy Silvan tactics, and I think she's not just good in a Silvan deck, she's good in any deck because of that fact that she enters play, that character, she chooses a hero, and that hero doesn't exhaust to commit to the quest. So whether that be Eowyn or Celeborn, or even Theodan the Shipwright. Doesn't matter who the hero is, it doesn't exhaust to commit to the quest.
Right. If you're in a pinch, Glorfindel is also a good kind of target for that response.
Yeah.
Spirit version,
I think she shines in a Silvan deck, because if, for example, you have the Naith Guide, play the Naith Guide, and you've got enough resources, and you say, for example, use 3 people to pull back the Naith Guide into your hand. You then look through the top 5 cards of your deck, pull out another Silvan, and then you've got the resources to play Naith Guide again. There's 2 heroes that don't exhaust to commit to the quest this round. I think it's brilliant.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say, is that depending on how you're going to use this in the bouncy deck, you can really get a lot of good action advantage with the Naith Guide, because there's so many cards. There's the Tree People, Faint Voices, Pursuing the Enemy, Island Amid Perils. The new one, what was the new one that we were just talking about off air? The new Spirit one. Anyways, but the point is that there's so many events that allow you to pull cards back into your hand that you can pull it back into your hand and replayer, provided that you have the resources, like you said, and that allows you to deal with, that gives you such an action advantage with your heroes. And the way that I use her in my deck is I use her for I don't use her. I use Celeborn and Thranduil, and so Celeborn is the normal kind of target for that. But I actually have decided that if I'm going to target anybody, I was going to target Thranduil, so Thranduil can quest for the 1, which isn't horrible, but he can then still defend. Celeborn, he can quest with his 3, and then if he's got Elven King, you can pull the Naith Guide back into your hand, and then you can recast using, there's just so many infinite options that you can use that Naith Guide for. It's a really good target to use for that bouncy feature, because if you need that action advantage, which I will say that by the end of the game, you probably don't, and so you may want to use the Naith Guide for a different purpose, maybe a chump blocker or something like that. If you're still needing the Naith Guide's action advantage, 5 or 6 or 7 rounds in, either you're up against a horrible quest or you've done something wrong. the kind of the things to not do with the Naith Guide is to use Thranduil's ability and bring him out or bring her out during the combat phase, because it doesn't really help much. I mean, unless you need because the Naith Guide does have one attack, so you could, if you have Celeborn, that gives it 2 attacks, so you could do stuff with it. But there's a lot better options usually in this bouncy Silvan deck to bring out during the combat phase. So I would suggest that anybody who's using this deck or this type of deck to really use the Naith Guide during the planning phase for that specific thing, or during the beginning of the questing phase. Even if you tree people, somebody back into your hand and get a Naith Guide, that's a good beginning move in the game. There's a lot of good stuff with having that action advantage at the beginning of the game.
Oh, definitely. So I've got to admit, I love the artwork that Magali has done for the Naith Guide. It's fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, she is an amazing artist. It's a shame she's not working for FFG anymore.
That is very, very true. And I love the flavor text that they've put in. I shall lead you well. Haldia, the Fellowship of the Ring. It's where he's taking them through Lothlorien. Well, through to Lothlorien. When they're blindfolded.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, you can't really go wrong with the Naith Guide. I think it's a great card all around, and I think she really shines in this Silvan deck that we're highlighting here in this group of videos that we're talking about.
So is there anything else to say about the Naith Guide, David? Because you've played with her a lot more than I have.
I think not really, but we talked about when and when not to use the Naith Guide, and I think that's pretty much it. So should we ring them? So I think we decided that we were going to do 2 sets of ringing, right? We were going to ring within a Silvan deck, or within this sort of deck type, and then ring as just a card in general.
Yes, that was correct.
Okay, so what do you got?
Well, as a card in general, I'd give it a 3 rings. As part of the packet, I'd give it 3 rings. Mainly because of the fact that I can see the use in all senses of using it as part of a Silvan deck and using it as not part of a Silvan deck. And it's good all the way around. You can't take away from her for just being good in a Silvan deck, because she's good in any sort of deck for her ability. That being said, you can't take away from her for being good in all decks, because you just want her in a Silvan deck. It doesn't work that way. She's a good all-round ally. Mm-hmm. So, David, what's your ratings?
Well, I think that in this group, within the, as just a general card, I think that she's a little squishy. As you would say, she's got 1/1 and 1 hit point, so she's really susceptible to archery damage, and she doesn't have any defense. So, so it's a good card and a great ability in just general decks. So, I have to give her a 4 kind of as an overall card. But I think that when you're using her in this bouncy Silvan, Slippery Silvan deck where the Silvans are coming in and out of play all the time and, doing all this, I think that that's when her ability can really shine, which I think it was meant to do. And so I think that she becomes easier to deal with because you have ways to get them out of the graveyard ways to get her out of the discard pile with Orifin. You have ways to bring her in and out of play to do stuff. I mean, that's kind of the name of the game with this deck. So I think within that deck, the Naith Guide serves kind of a big purpose to gain action advantage, even more so than another deck. So I'm going to have to give her a 2 within just this sort of deck and how important. the card is. There's certain cards that you can't live without in this deck, and you can live without her if you don't see her, but you get really frustrated at the beginning of the game if you don't have a Naith Guide floating around. So join us next time as we talk about more cards from this Silvan deck. And if you're interested in finding this or any of our back episodes of Card Talk, feel free to search YouTube, where you can find our flagship video episodes with the username Card Talk 2018. Or you can search the RSS feed, cardtalk2018.libsyn.org, for our extended audio versions of our podcast. Or you can find us on Facebook at Card Talk 2018. And if you have any questions for Grant or myself, or for both of us, feel free to email us at cardtalk2018@gmail.com.